terrible at this. I have to read this off of a cue card. Ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. Today we're doing a special episode. We're going to talk about nothing but Landfall Day Zero. It's a theme, you could say. My name is Chris Nelson, but everybody calls me Rotten Deadite, and I forgot to tell you guys what order to go in, so let's just do it sloppy.
All right. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm Mojo.
I'm Cody Higgy. I am Ordo Corvus.
I'll use Ziegler.
Hey, my name is Michael Ziegler, but you probably know me as Scourgicus or potentially as Moonsugar Leader.
And I'm Evan. I sometimes float around the Redditverse as Potatosaurus Rex.
So, let's start off with a really fast introduction. Friends, and you're probably the most unintentionally hilarious at the moment. Can you tell me what Landfall Day Zero is exactly?
Okay. Fucking shit. Put me on the spot like this. Well, it's a multi-author project. It's actually something like a while ago, like I don't even know how long ago now, that I was like, you know what, we should do a GC9 thing. And
it's about a year and a half now, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. And yes, for all you people watching, this has been brewing for a long time. But yeah, I had a hankering for some dank lore, and I had this idea where we would all write different stories of the Ghost Choirs. And you have not seen anything from me yet, but you will.
Yeah, that's right. You're writing the last part, aren't you?
I am indeed.
So let's really quick. Let's talk about what Ghost Choir 9 is.
Do we want the lore answer or the meta answer?
Both.
Yeah, let's cover both.
Let's cover some context. Well, we I think originally first saw the first mention of the Ghost Choir in the Return False forum posts on the OG Bethesda forums, which I don't even know if anyone uses anymore. If there are, let me know.
They do actually.
It's incredibly busy. Yeah.
All right. I barely go to Reddit.
They were summoned to kill to null. What's his name?
Nuhada, or
Yeah.
Hada, and they ghosted Hada in the Nuhada formation.
Nuhada first. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first real, I think, instance that we've seen of the Ghost Choir, and then jump forward into circa 2014-ish, and we were all in the midst of our fucking Secunda mod, and a wild Kirkbride appeared and started just busting dank lore everywhere.
Yeah. In an IRC channel we were all in.
This idea of the Ghost Choir 9 being this like a tabletop role-playing game. Basically how he described it was Elder Scrolls with the serial codes scratched off. And so I forget what system he wanted to use. I think it was the Cypher system, but
yeah, it was Cypher, I think. And the idea was that we were all going to play members of the Ghost Choir that would be sent back in time in Tamriel when something was going wrong in the timeline, and the Ghost Choir would go there to correct the timeline back to like the standard, what's it called?
Tamriel Prime.
Tamriel Prime, or was it Empire Actual, I think?
Yeah, that might be it, yeah.
Like the main, like the timeline that we as Elder Scrolls fans know. So like, for like the example I was using for the adventure I was fucking around with was that the Ghost Choir gets summoned in to, because all of a sudden the clan Roken isn't leaving for some reason. Oh. And like, at the in the first council, when the first council is formed, for some reason or other, they've decided not to leave, and the Ghost Choir 9 have to go back and figure out a way to get Clan Rorken to leave the Dwemer and go to Hammerfell. So GC9 was kind of like a
Spec Ops time unit.
Yeah, a special operations time unit, sort of a little bit of, you know, I mean, well, I don't think I'm stepping out on a limb if I were to say that Michael Kirkbride is a huge Doctor Who nut.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
big. And so, you know, timey-wimey stuff is kind of second nature to him. He does it all the time. And if you ever want to watch Kirkbride's eyes light up about something that isn't Elder Scrolls, just start talking to him about, you know.
Just mention Matt Smith in the House of We.
Yeah,
and
just mention Matt Smith and he'll just explode.
I think something that we ought to impinge there about the Ghost Choir and its nature. It was brought up that Ghost Choir's nature is to redirect time flow to Empire Actual or Tamriel Prime. And we actually ended up kind of losing them to their effort to stop Numidium, because what they ended up starting as isn't what they died as. Because their initial, I guess, operation orders were to divert time back to the stream that we as Elder Scrolls fans know. And then they stopped doing that at some point. Instead, they changed their operation directive to be stop Numidium from coming back at all costs.
Well, because Numidium threatens every timeline simultaneously.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Hope I didn't just give anything away.
Another thing I would like to say is another crucial aspect to the Ghost Choirs are each member can take control of a person in history. So, like, say something goes wrong with the Council of Skiffs, somebody can pop in as Pono or Morehouse, and every dice roll, every action you take risks the consequence of them waking up and realizing they're not somebody else.
Yeah, and they kick the choir member out.
Some.
So it's very tricky stuff, but it gives Elder Scrolls fans the ability to go back and screw around with alternate timelines and so on. I was really looking forward to it. It's just a shame that we would have had to shave the serial numbers off.
Yeah.
So you guys wrote a.
I was gonna say, if you guys want to play, just pick up the Cipher system. That's all you really need. I've rolled GC9 campaigns just with that. You just wing it.
Well, that's the. It's been pointed out to me that people need to know a lot more about the. They feel they need to know a lot more about the Ghost Choir universe and about this particular corner of Elder Scrolls lore that a lot of people have explained to me feels sort of like concealed and off limits by what they like to call the Elder Scrolls lore Illuminati.
Oh man, I love it.
They feel that we're sort of sitting on really, really dank lore, and we're just sort of partitioning it out little bit by little bit, and so on. Like, we've got this bank of giant, documents that explain every single little nuance of the Elder Scrolls universe and the timeline from like Arena all the way to Elder Scrolls 20. And
in reality, we have Google Drive filled with shit.
That's the dream sleep.
Sure, fire away, Cody.
We are completely making shit up.
Yeah,
it's true.
We have access to all the same. I mean, there's no secret stash of dank lores. It's all on the Imperial Library, the official boards, on Reddit, in the Facebook groups. It's all out there. And all we do is to talk to each other and co-conspire and encourage each other's awful ideas until they grow out of proportion, and then we confidently post them where others can see them. I mean, there's no great secret here.
Creative license, I think, is the biggest set apart.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of matured and adapted to the idea of subjective canon enough to where we're not really afraid to write things like an Elder Scrolls story in the cast of the Road Warrior. which is something I promise I'm totally not working on.
Yeah, you know that's a good idea. You hear it just once, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's got to happen."
Oh, it needs to, and it will, hopefully.
So you guys wrote a series of short stories about the Ghost Choir 9 dealing with, somebody encapsulate this. I'm trying to get LJ in here.
So the idea, as I would put it, but other people might disagree, is that the base plot line of Landfall Daisier is Ghost Choir 9 gets summoned by the Imperial powers that be to try to stop Numidium. And they initially attempt to do this kind of by their standard method, which is, go back in time, alter the timelines. But there's complications. And so it becomes a by any means necessary. And things get really crazy.
Yeah, I would say
there he is.
Hey, LJ.
Yeah, there we go.
Welcome back, man. Haven't seen you in a minute.
LJ?
I don't know. We'll see if his microphone works.
Is he there? Maybe. Okay, well, while we're waiting to figure that one, I'll go back and say what I was starting to.
Yeah.
What we have with LFDZ is kind of, or Landfall Daisier, that I'll call LFDZ most of the time because I forget. What we've got with that is what I mentioned earlier about the Ghost Choir forgetting its initial directive and going back to stop Numidium at all costs. So this is kind of the story of their fall, is the way that I viewed it.
And this, of course, raised a huge number of questions on a whole bunch of different channels where these stories are being posted, and we've got like a big long list of them. And I'm going to start at the top of this list that you put together, Michael.
Cool.
From Infinite Ion through TES Lore, I assume the subreddit, asks, is Tamriel a multiverse nexus? Okay, now try to explain if Tamriel is a nexus of multiverses in 5 minutes or less.
Easy. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Just open a DC comic book. Go buy Multiversity. You'll figure it out in 10 minutes. Done.
Yeah, and if you're wondering if the Multiversity series has anything to do with the Elder Scrolls multiverse, all I can tell you is that the authors were reading that shit when they made it up.
There you go.
Let's just say some of the fans were big fans of like Hyper Time, which still I don't fucking understand.
So the way that I explain it is that there are multiple Tamriels. We have the Tamriel, which we call Tamriel Prime or Empire Actual, and that is the Tamriel of the games that we all play in. But there are other universes. And on a meta level, this is because there's mods and stuff like that. And there is at least one universe in which all of the dragons are actually Thomas the Tank Engines.
There's a couple of those.
There's a lot of those.
Judging from the downloads.
Ever. So I would say, yeah, that Tamriel as we know it, I don't know, maybe not a nexus, but it's definitely, there are gazillions of Tamriels. And do they all flow into each other? Yes. Do they sometimes flow back into the games? Yes, because sometimes the developers will send in fun stuff that, from the fans or whatnot. And especially you saw that in Morrowind. Right.
Yeah, there's more than a few little nods to fan stuff, and I'm talking fishy sticks that show up in Morrowind and a certain creeper.
Yeah.
I would also posit that if there were a nexus, it would be Tamriel as we see him in the games, and because everything branches from there. That is that's where we start, and then we make it weird, or we take it to space, or
I want to say
insert a dick somewhere where it doesn't belong.
The addition of penises, yes.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Cody, did you have something to say?
Yeah. I think a point I was trying to make, I think last week in the Facebook group, we're talking about subjective canon, and I think this rolls very nicely into that, is that, we talk about subjective canon in it's something when you talk about tabletop role-playing game, everybody understands how subjective canon works. There's no question about it. If your tabletop gaming party gets together and you go on an adventure, you complete a certain campaign, you defeat a certain NPC, what have you, it's understood that that's your group's interpretation of the story. Now, all of a sudden, we take this same idea into a video game realm, and people seem to have some trouble understanding how that applies. Because I think in games, we treat games a lot of the times the way we treat books or movies or other media, as where there is no subjective canon. It's an objective set canon by the author. And I think TESS from the beginning, the very beginning, it started as the developers' after work D&D game that they decided to turn into use as a jumping off point to create the Elder Scrolls Arena. Is my understanding of how that all started. It was in that spirit of collective ownership from the very beginning. And I think those of us friends, and you can certainly attest to this, you were there, you've been playing these games since the beginning. There's always been a certain amount of that subjective nature to them, is there not?
Well, especially in the first games, because it was like a soft clay ready to be molded. It was so fluid, and
they were roguelikes, weren't they?
The world was still setting. The universe was still coming together, and I mean, just to make it more meta, like forum activity, like during those days, going through Redguard was something I'm honestly, I only see pale attempts at, where there is a hardcore developer fan interaction that really helped establish a firm setting, to take the games forward. And so, of course, with Redguard, we see the pocket guide, where it is this wonderful book and comic, and it gives us everything we need to jump into the world and see like the life that it has.
Yeah, you're starting to see a little bit of that in Elder Scrolls Online. The developers and the writing team for ESO are really in touch with the online forums, and they're in touch with multiple forums. They post everywhere. So I mean, there's a lot of community involvement in that. It's just, I mean, as the Elder Scrolls games got increasingly popular, the logistics behind that kind of interactivity got, it's just impossible. We have already gone off the rails. I'm on the second question. I'm just going to keep going. Erithor asks, how is LDZ connected to other codas?
How is it not?
Yeah, I would say that it runs through them, but in a very clandestine way. Something that actually never got posted through the LFDZ stuff was the tenets of the Ghost Choir that I kind of just bullshitted out one day, and everybody was like, "Hey, these are actually kind of cool." The idea behind Ghost Choir is that it's kind of the man behind the machine. Like, it's like the Wizard of Oz, where you never see the real magic of it because they're intentionally discreet. So you're not really supposed to know that they're altering the time stream. Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
When they're doing things right, you'll never know they did anything at all.
Exactly.
The Out of World asks a long one. On the subject of Landfall, I've noticed in the past there are multiple different works under that title. There are plenty of elements common between them, but definitely some divergences if memory serves. Some of those stories are harder to dig up on the internet than others, with chunks missing from some altogether. Where can one find them for reading, and how are they interrelated?
Oh, that's a heavy loaded question.
Yeah.
I think the obvious answer is Tomorrowind Today.
Yeah.
There is a ton of stuff. I mean, there's stuff that's like on the main kind of website itself, but also if you go into the first few issues, had a bunch of comments, and people posted their codas in there. So there is a load of stuff at Tomorrowind Today.
I'll try to include a link.
What was the rest of that question?
Yeah, how are they interrelated? We've kind of already addressed that. All codas are interrelated.
The coda space, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, choose to be a part of it or not, doesn't matter.
Of course, my main guy Razin is all through the Landfall Daisier stuff, and will continue to be.
So Mark Anton Hubert, who wins the award for coolest name so far, asks, besides the lore points already mentioned, maybe some glimpses about the way the writing team set all this stuff up, about how it connects to other Landfall and coda texts. So yeah,
all right,
I already covered that. Yeah,
I kind of covered that. I mean, well, I didn't say I came up with the idea because I was still really pissed off when Kirkbride released like snippets from Landfall Day 1 where Ghostquire 9 gets ghosted. I never forgave him for that. I still don't. And Kirkbride, if you're watching, I have one word for you. Gorp. So watch yourself. Yeah, so I mean, it's a story of their fall. Like Evan, you were saying that earlier. It's a story of their fall. Like absolutely. But
yeah, the point that
one song of the Ghostquire, and those fuckers can't die.
They don't in all instances either die. Some instances they get to live. And that's the fun of writing the story, is that we're writing the one instance in which they all live to die. So that's kind of been a fun little jaunt through the creative writing process of this. And to get to the heart of the question as to how it relates to Landfall, like we've said, they die during Landfall. And that was actually my first introduction to the Ghostquire, was the LFD1 snippets that were released. And that's where we kind of all dived from with this project.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about early on was that in Landfall Day 1, it says that the Ghostquire is vaped. And we talked about what does that mean? And there was a lot of, and I'm sure we'll get into this, discussion about what is the ontology of the Ghostquire? Are they people? Are they computer programs? And what does the vaping mean? And one of the thoughts that we had was that it meant that they were set free.
Yeah, also true. It sort of raises the question, well, if they were destroyed during Landfall, then how were they able to originate themselves in the Ninth Era? And the answer is timey-wimey.
Yes.
So about Coda in general, Buckney Bose, through TES lore, asks, was Akulekin's power source while piloted by the Nerevarine his or her combined oversoul?
No. Out of the pay grade.
Yeah, outside of our pay grade, yeah. That's something you're going to want to ask MK. My guess is that it was the Mantella.
Yeah, I would say it's the way that I choose to look at it is it works a lot like Numidium in the fact that it does require Mantella. The weird point is that instead of a Mantella combined of an Oversoul, like the Tiber one that powered Numidium, this Mantella was actually of all combined Nerevarine Oversouls. So yes and no is how I would answer that on a speculation basis.
Yeah, there was discussion about that. I remember.
I don't.
No, there was because I think the conclusion that we were pointed towards, though not handed, was that the Nerevarine in those stories is all Nerevarines.
To connect it to LFDZ, when I wrote, I don't know if it got connected, the New Rosdanian Firelight Tale, that one end up showing up yet, or is that still to come?
That one shows up in January.
Okay, well, spoilers. I'll shut up now.
Okay, so Johnny Anonymous asks, where did the Prophet of Landfall come from, and what exactly is he?
I know where he came from.
Okay, can you say?
I can answer this with authority.
All right.
I'm not allowed to answer it.
He came down from the mountains.
Oh,
nice.
Right, yeah, okay.
Well played.
The short answer to that is probably it's above our pay grade.
Yeah.
Snowstrider asks, how exactly was Numidium controlled? Did it just follow Tiber Septim's orders, or I guess it isn't some giant mech suit that Tiber was in during the conquest of Alinor? Of course it was a giant fucking mech suit.
No, they had the totem of Tiber Septim. That was the controlling mechanism, which I don't even think controlled it that well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but
I think that was important to go this direction, and then you get the fuck out of its way.
Right, I suspect that's what what Snowstrider's question is
Tiber pointed it west,
standing on top of it with a big stick, like a flight controller, you know, like a big Cytec, you know. Did he have Hodus? Did it, you know, all that kind of stuff? But no, I think it was when we say did Tiber Septim controlled Numidium, I think it was very much sort of like a light and get away kind of situation. You know, it was like you could kind of point it in a general direction, but that was probably the full extent. And it did go nuts after a while. It just fucked off, you know. And, you know, it's kind of hard to say that you're controlling something when you can't decide when it leaves. I mean, maybe he had absolutely no control over it whatsoever. I mean, for all we know, it started on the elves and then was going to get to humans and then sort of disassembled itself, you know, distributed. The Auto World asks, where, if at all, is Dagoth-Ur in the overarching narrative of Coda? Does he persist among the divine as the various gods did, a la Jubal's bachelor party, or was he the removal of the heart as the seat of his essence, his permanent undoing? The All Stories Are True segment of Coda, though a wacky tangent it was, seemed to suggest otherwise given his appearance among the pseudo-sixth house on the Dream Sleeves stream show. Is he involved in the appearance of Ash Vampires and Dias Irae?
Oh, jeez.
I think that one's probably both.
That's a long question.
Yeah.
We'll answer it with, like, Dagoth-Ur being in Coda. The whole idea of Dagoth-Ur and the Sharmat is antithetical to Coda in general. It doesn't have a place there. So you don't see Dagoth-Ur popping up. He's not at the wedding. You know, you see him once in the Pseudo Six house, as that was brought up. Which, the way I interpret it, is it's a fictionalized setting of the times that were. Even though it's called Tomorrowind, it's the times gone by where the gods were just and did well by their people, and they protected their people. And, you know, so it's more of like a tribute to times gone by through superheroes.
Yeah, through misremembrance and, you know, the memory, decay of memory and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and at the core, that's what, you know, that's my view of comics. Like, you know, superhero comics is to bring you back to the time that was good, even though that never really existed.
Which, yeah.
and for all we know, that stuff could be real in Coda. Like, all those things could be their own self-contained universes, which I'm not opposed to that idea. I've always been kind of open with the whole idea of, well, like DC Comics does it perfectly. Like, one comic character has, like, in Multiversity, for instance, there's a rabbit character who writes about a Flash character from a different universe. Like, what he wrote is that universe. And just that whole branching concept I've always been a fan of. So I don't... If Dagoth-Ur were to be in Coda, it'd definitely be in Tomorrowind, and that shit could totally be real. I love Tomorrowind anyways.
Another question from Out of World. Why Zir, the Daedric equivalent of Z in particular? Was it picked to denote finality, or was there some other significance to it?
We were calling it Zed originally, and then it evolved to... It's supposed to be another zero kind of phrase. Like, there's a zero in Coda, so it's another coding reference. And then it got transposed to Zur.
So King Baron from TES Lore asks, is the Ghost Choir the same person we see in the Pocket Guide to the Empire 2? as Blade Seneschal of Empress. Oh God. Oh, Morathatha. Morathatha. Thank you. Jeez. Is it the same Blade Seneschal Titus Aloris since Tiber Septim times?
Maybe.
Yeah, haven't had to think about that one.
Depends what personalities are driving the Ghost Choir at those times.
Yeah, that's a little meta.
I would say that the Duke is probably the best fit to that particular personality, but is not the whole Ghost Choir. You go back. There's the post. It's floating around on Reddit. The 9 Mimics of Ghost Choir 9, and Duke.
A couple of those actually.
Yeah, there's a couple iterations of it, but I think 2 of them are contained on the single post, and then I wrote the reiteration of those 9 Mimics. But I would say, to answer this question, you're seeing the Duke there, not the whole Ghost Choir, and that Blade Seneschal isn't always Duke.
Right.
Yeah,
anything that Ghost Choir 9 occupies is not necessarily all of Ghost Choir 9. It could be just one member, and it doesn't always have to be the same member.
Exactly. There's a couple of questions that people have asked. And I think, like I put in the notes here, I said, see also that King Joe 64 asks about does the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs help to explain the development of the individual ghosts? Which, dear Lord.
Yeah.
But one of the part of the
are we going to answer the Myers-Briggs thing?
I wasn't going to go on it specifically, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's very important to note that the Myers-Briggs personality exams are based on Carl Jung's archetype personalities.
Brilliant.
And the archetype of personalities are based on mythical archetypes. Like, for example, the king, the thief, the mage, etc., etc. So if you were to say, are the Ghost Choir 9 based on Myers-Briggs? You could say, are they based on Carl Jung's archetype personalities? In which case, my answer to you would be any legend is based on Carl Jung.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of the ghosts have a very archetypal kind of vibe to them. Some more so than others, but definitely.
Yeah, I'm very predictable.
I thought I knew it before we did the cast. That's the weird thing. Anyways.
Yeah.
But one of the things
fucking Rotten Day, it's going to talk about Jung again. Jesus, a broken record.
It's all right, man. Carl Jung is the man. What are you talking about? But no, one of the things I was going to say was that so we all kind of have our own different ideas about the Ghost Choir, and sometimes radically, and I'm hoping at some point we get LJ to talk about his stuff, because he's like the anti-Ghost Choir guy with Anubis, and that's just bloody brilliant. But one of the ideas that I had is that Ghost Choir 9 is almost like a repeating computer program, to go a little bit meta. And that's why it originally started off with like one ghost who may or may not have been Pelinal, and then it keeps replicating. Yep, Pelinal, yes, you see? And then it keeps replicating. And so we've gotten up to the 9th Ghost Choir, where there are 9 ghosts. And even more so, it is my dank lore that Captain Starkweather is in fact Pelinal. He is the first ghost.
Oh.
He is the first ghost.
I would argue that Pelinal is actually a Ghost Choir unto himself.
He was. He was the very first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of ghost?
I wouldn't loop him into Ghost Choir 9, the Starkweather, because the personality of Pelinal doesn't really fit the Gambling Man.
Oh, that's true. That's a fair point.
Yeah, but you could also make the argument that, it's probably been a few thousand years. Maybe he chilled out somewhat.
Maybe. I like to look at Ghost Choir as... So there's a reason that it's called Ghost Choir 9. It is the ninth. Not necessarily that it has 9 personalities and each squire is linked, to their number as far as the personalities that it has. But I did kind of apply that to Pelinal in saying that he was Ghost Choir 2. And I think that shows up somewhere else as well. But Pelinal, I think, was the Ghost Choir tasked with linking back to Tamriel Prime and Empire Actual by eliminating the elves in order to allow man to progress at all.
Mass genocide.
Yeah, well,
So-
you get it done.
I think that he was a retroactive measure employed by future Imperials to carry out the mission that we see him carry out in the Songs of Pelinal.
Yep, pretty good. Let's see. I lost my place here.
We were on 11, going down to Jasser.
Who's asking, do we know which Ghost Choir is made from which memory?
That defeats the point of the Ghost Choir.
Yeah. It's non-specific. Well, I guess you could it's Empire Actual's memory, I guess. It's Tamriel Prime's memory?
I guess.
But memory arguably memory doesn't exist in the Ninth Era. Not in the way that it traditionally does.
Not in the way that we remember it happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I have no idea what
Yeah.
the fuck this was.
That's kind of a null answer. Yeah.
Didn't make no sense.
What is the relationship between the Cripple Queen of Reach Rock and King Orgnum, the Serpent God of the Sakatal?
I suppose this one's for me, but none that I'm aware of.
Yeah, this is you. This is you.
Yeah, there's
Happy accident.
yeah, I don't know where. I mean, Satakal's cool, but there was no intention to link those two things together there. In Adel's
Well,
story.
now you have something to think about, Cody.
I suppose I do.
What is
like
Cyrodism?
If memory serves, this thing about Cyrodism goes back to Cody's story.
Yeah,
Is that a word you made up?
it is a
Cody.
word I made up. And I believe I was referencing religion. I believe that is what she was calling the imperial cult, but now I'm having to go back and look because I.
So it's a Cyrodiilic philosophy of some kind?
Yeah, I would say it in the same way we might describe something as being Anglo. Just simply a Cyrodiilic culture being referenced. I do believe I'm trying to remember where I used that, because I do believe I used it specifically in a religious context, but it was a throwaway word.
What are the limits of memory's power?
Remembering shit. Which is a fantastic power to have. America opens.
Maybe we should start off with what is memory.
Jesus. We don't have that kind of time. All right, I'm moving on.
That's a big one that we don't have.
Been documented elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been in a CodaCast.
Dihydrogen monoxide.
And if we didn't, if we could do it, so it has to be there.
It's also in my novel Requiem, so go read that. It's only 300 pages.
Yeah, there you go. Knock that one out real quick. What is the most dangerous black team the Ekmeri Wraiths fought?
LJ, this one's you, bro.
Shit.
His first words. Shit.
I'm like listening because I'm like multitasking and I'm just like I wanted to interject, but busy. And then I was like, these hit me with that, and I was like, fuck, I didn't really think about that when I was writing it.
Well, now you got something to think about.
Yeah, if I have to say,
I guess.
the one thing that the X-Men race actually fought against that was actually tough for them was probably Trimac. I think I described that in one of the stories. Was it's like there's like that was going at with how Trimac was actually. Well, yeah, it was like actually I messed up. It was the Houding was the worst person for them to fight. From my opinion, the Houding is literally just like a person who has he literally has nothing to lose. So he literally when he fights he can do nothing but win. So when the X-Men race,
I like that. That's really good. I like that a lot.
you're like, oh yeah, we can beat this motherfucker. And then he's just kind of like, I have nothing you can take away from me, so I'm just going to take you. And
you're gonna love it when if I ever get around to finishing that story I'm writing, you're gonna freaking love the ending.
Maybe you could be a little bit more cryptic with that.
I don't want to overpromise. Molag Bal, King of Beggars, and Namira and all that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. That's a well-phrased question, so our answer is yeah, all right. What is the most brilliant military strategy proposed by the OYARSA against the Aldmeri Dominion?
Okay, so this is me, the Oyarsa. Okay, so if you don't know what the Oyarsa is, in my take on the Ghost Choir, there is a moth intelligence, which might or might not be similar to a computer program, that generates the Ghost Choir and has them go do stuff. It also functions as the logic core of the Imperial war machine. It comes up with crazy methods to try to stop the Thalmor. Because you have to remember, at least in my conception of the last war, the Thalmor bring out everything. They unleash all the Dawn magics that they've been holding from the beginning of time. They go completely, they erase time. They do absolutely crazy stuff. And so the Oyarsa is this thing that comes up with ways to combat that. And personally, one of the things that I think was its most ruthless, and which they ended up not doing, was it proposed a countermeasure. In my codeverse, the Red Guards are wiped out through genetic sterilization. And the Oyarsa suggested a similar thing for the Khajiit. Yeah, there's actually and again, this is in my conception, there is a timeline in which, what was it, 2 years of the war is erased by the Thalmor, and during those 2 years, the Imperials burned down Valenwood, they wiped out the Khajiit, and they had the Altmer almost defeated, and then the Altmer pulled some kind of crazy Draco Chrysalis out of nowhere and undid everything. So the Oyarsa is supposed to stop stuff like that. It either did not anticipate Numidium, or it was behind its coming.
Okay. That's a much clearer answer than I thought I was going to get. Is Razin connected to the Rajin, the thief god of the Khajiit, and how? Is Razin the Khajiiti prophet of Azura, as the precursor would be the Bosmeri prophet of Yifur?
Oh boy, how many hours do we have?
Yeah, that's a long answer.
I would say that Razin's connection isn't as much to Rajin, who appears, by the way, in ESO, and he's kind of a dick. He's kind of a dick, and I don't like him.
All right, yeah. All right, that's fair.
It's that one quest, man. It's that one quest on.
I think I know the one. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
spoilers.
about. I'm like, really, bro? Come on. Yeah. So I don't know how much Razin ties in with him. The whole thing with him becoming the prophet of Azura is something that happens in 10,000 years that I'm not going to tell, because Razin's lived for 10,000 years and then he comes back in time, and it's just, that's how it happens. But there'll be more about that.
Okay, I'm going to skip this next one by request. 20. Hey, Laurel, how analogous would the ghost choirs be to the provisional house? How would it be different? How would it be the same? Christ, of course she asks a tough one.
I don't see how at all it could be connected to the provisional house.
You don't?
Well, I can. Oh, fuck. Now that we're talking about it, it's like, yeah, okay, actually, shit. It's actually really complicated.
Yeah, it's actually really complicated. The problem is that the provisional house is intrinsically higher dimensional than the normally 4-dimensional tamriel. It's operating on at least, I would say, probably a sixth dimension, or I don't think it might be the the provisional house is probably operating on the 5th dimension. Yeah, right, Franzen, because it's seeing everything from the beginning and the end of time, but not necessarily alternate timelines as well. The problem is that Ghost Choir 9, I think, operates at an even higher level than that because it can visit other parallel dimensions. Well, can it though? No, it can. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Let's say that. Yeah, it can actually traverse, from 5th to 6th dimensions. It can move laterally in lateral timelines. Because it has to, because it exists in order to move a time shift laterally back onto its standardized course. So because the provisional house exists in a similar multidimensional state, I'd say that they could be very similar. But I don't. That's a really good one. How would it be different? Shit. All right. I don't know. That's a long one. I don't know how much time we have.
Historically,
I want to put more thought into that than I have right now. How about that?
Like the provisional house we've seen just in the sermons and what it's used for, isn't really the same as how Ghost Choir 9 what they do. It's almost like in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Like the provisional house is like a nexus of information. From there, Vivek and Nerevar saw the two-headed king being Tiber Septim, and getting these premonitions. Sorry, Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's no Star Wars references in Elder Scrolls. What are you talking about?
None. Keep it out. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's. Oh shit. Okay, let's just keep going. Yeah. How do the Akaviri view the characters of Landfall Daezir?
As
the same way they view everything else.
Food.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
anyone
so.
writing about the Akaviri in GC9?
I don't think anybody has.
Then they're ambivalent about them.
There's a guy in the community who's really into the Sayesi, and I tried to get him to write something, but no luck.
I would say that the thing about Ghost Choir 9 is that it doesn't really operate too much in Akavir. Because
weird for him.
Yeah.
No, fuck that shit. Just let that have its mystery. Let that the mystery.
Them people got their own fucking problems, man.
It's like trying to look sideways for them would be looking. It's hard to rationalize the Ghost Choir having to deal with Akavir too much because of what we've established about it is that it's a Cyrodiilic initiative to keep the timeline straight. And Akavir is kind of a divergence of that timeline, so why fuck with it?
Yeah, I agree. The problem is that because Akavir is always in the future, somebody coming back to the past from the future is going to have exactly the same problems getting to Akavir as anyone else in Tamriel. It's just really hard to get there. It's not like, because this is sort of like the nature of the way time works in Tamriel is that wherever to use the old phrase, wherever you go, that's where you are. So if you follow that logic, that means that at no point can you be where you're not.
Yeah.
Now, so I think I've succinctly answered that question. I'm going to keep moving before somebody figures out that I didn't. Evan, you wanted a question. This next question: what is your favorite idea in Landfall Day Zero?
Yes. We'll go around while I try and find a succinct way to put it.
Okay. Franzen.
Oh shit! Why'd you have to start with me?
Because you're all the way in the left. You're literally first in line for me. That's the entire span of the logic, is that you're the guy at the beginning.
Oh, that's so hard to answer. Because my go-to is stuff that is in my story, which no one even here knows about yet.
So your favorite ideas are your ideas.
Yeah, and that's a selfish answer. Fuck. Circle back to me.
Okay. Having heard some of Chris's stuff, yeah, they're pretty great ideas.
Cody, what do you think?
Me? Do you want me to single out a favorite idea? I don't know. God, it's going to sound corny as shit, but I think that the project itself, coming together like this and working on some cool-ass lore, it's not so much the content of the project that I'm in love with, although the content is great. And I certainly do love the content, but I mean, if I were to pick a favorite thing about it, it would be getting together and collaborating over these past few months and sharing our stories and talking and cooking the ideas in the private PM channels on Facebook or whatever, and then putting it out there, seeing my friends' stuff that I've sat with and had a role in the gestation of, and then seeing it go out on Reddit and seeing the community at large comment and question and all of us coming together to answer those, I think has been my favorite part of the project so far.
Yeah, I'll piggyback straight through that and say that my favorite part about getting into all this, the idea of the project was to open a lot of doors. And we just kicked them the fuck down and opened up a whole lot of revenue for weird shit to pass through.
Yes.
So, I think the fact that the Ghost Choir can portray itself as some Star Wars-esque motherfuckers, because that's how I wrote it all, was a giant space opera. And it was a lot of fun to get through. So the idea that really drove my creative process and showed up a lot throughout all of the LFDZ stuff was, like Cody said, just the community nature of this project and making it, a little bit more fun, expanding upon some, open source stuff and really getting to the heart of the nature of Bethsoft games, like they've supposed to have been about for a while.
LJ, how about yours?
Yeah. See, my favorite idea, I guess, with Landfall Day Zero itself is the idea of pretty much, I don't want to say sets, because fall forward, but sense. But pretty much, because the idea that a person could be pretty much like a computer program is what it's something I kind of been thinking about myself, other things I've been working on. But what Landfall Day Zero kind of goes with the Ghost Choir, with how they're pretty much, in my opinion, they're like empty states where there's nothing in them except for what people tell them to do. And that's kind of what goes with my Anubis story, with how he's tracking down the Ghost Choir to kill him, because he puts him as, to them it's a mercy, to him it's a mercy kill, because they're not people. That's why he wants to go and pretty much just end them all. But that's what pretty much the main thing in my mind. I really like the Ghost Choir, because they're pretty much just empty states that aren't really living things.
like, I guess it's almost like result without will, kind of.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
That's really serious. I don't know how I feel about that, but that's really serious. I'd have to think about that for a while because that's kind of making my brain fizz in a good way. Did anybody not go?
Yeah, me. So everything that everybody else said, but I love these characters. They are so much fun, and it's just endlessly fun to me to watch each of us kind of come up with our own permutations of the different ghosts. And like, Kat is totally different in Evan's stories than she is in mine, and I love that. I think it's too much fun, and I think we've gotten some very interesting characters that you guys have written. Who doesn't love Adele Reinhold? I mean, come on, right? She's fantastic. I'm like,
She's my
oh my
dream
god,
woman,
she's like a crazy cyborg pirate woman. I'm like, this is like the greatest idea ever. I love Anubis. I love his pathos. I love John, the way that Evan has written him. And there's so right. There's so much good stuff, and the characters are so much fun. I have a strong suspicion that there are a number of us who are going to keep writing about the members of the Ghost Choir long after this project is over, because they're just that great.
Oh yeah, I can never let go of John and the Crowing. We'll get to that later though, because there's a question specifically about that coming up.
Well, I have to tell you, my favorite part about this project is that it's finished. Because I'm serious, because there are a lot of community projects out there that are, a lot of community projects in any fandom that start and don't get finished. There's a lot of stuff a lot of really great ideas that never see the light of day because people just can't put a period at the end of the sentence. And it's, the greatest ideas and the greatest fiction in the world won't do you any damn good if you can't friggin' end it, if you can't finish it. So, and I mean, if you guys keep building on, Ghost Choir 9, then that's fine. But it's the idea that that you set a goal and then you met it is the important part here,
Now I feel all validated as a writer and shit. Thanks, man.
There you go. Geez, I lost my place again. Who is the Raven King? Oh no, when was the Mages Guild reformed?
Okay, that was me. And so in my Codaverse, Corpse of Nirn is healed. And that's in a Khajiit Coda. Anyway, Nirn is healed, comes back together, and Nirn starts to remember herself. And so you get, like, the towers, you get some of the people start to come back. Not individual people, but like the Imperials. The men return. And eventually you see a return of the diaspora from the moons come back to Nirn. And by the time that they get there, the Imperials have already, read these remembered books, and they're recreating some of the things that had been like the Mages Guild. So early 6th era, maybe really late 5th era.
Okay. Who was the Raven King who the Reachmen worship? Is he linked to Baron Ogod, Baron Othrock of Dwynman, who defeated the Cameron, the Usurper, and the Order of the Raven? Has he some connection with Nocturnal and Tava? Man, these questions are complex.
Yeah. The Raven King there is King Raven, who I've written a whole series of stories of sort of a Reachman mythology about. It was based on idea. It was actually a dare that Lady Nerevar made to me. That I was reading about some Pacific Northwestern tribes, and they see the Raven as both a creator god and a trickster god. He's almost a Promethean kind of figure. And I said, well, that sounds extremely laconic. And that would be a fun thing to write about. And she said, you should do it. So I went to understand King Rafen. I mean, first, if you go and you read I've written, I don't know how many, I think 7 or 8 lays of King Rafen that are written. It was an attempt to write lore in the style of a Norse saga. But I went and I couldn't just write the lore as we all know it, because that would be boring. The idea was a Reachman's take on lore, where they see the Daedra as it's almost real similar to. I took a lot of inspiration from Mankar's writings and his ramblings at the end of Oblivion. It's a Daedra-centric pantheon that sees the Aedra as these usurpers and philanderers, and so King Rafen being the active sort of remnant of Lorcan that they see as the center of this pantheon, at least this whatever particular tribe of Reachman that Adelbrecht is from to. So that's where that came from. As far as a connection to the Order of the Raven, the Cameron Usurper from Daggerfall, I think, is where Order of the Raven came up.
Mm-hmm.
There was no conscious. I was aware of that being a thing. There was no conscious decision to connect the two, simply because the Daggerfall Order of the Raven, I couldn't find hardly anything about. There wasn't a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of information out there. I personally have never played Daggerfall. I've never had the opportunity. So I mean, I guess you could try to connect the two together, but I don't know. I wasn't able to find enough information to make their a meaningful connection there. I guess would be the short answer.
So maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Reachman and Daggerfall as they have maybe nightly orders of Reachman in service to the king. I don't know. It'd be interesting to.
Next question's lovely. I understand absolutely nothing from the crowing of Resdane. Can someone explain it to me?
I have been waiting for this one.
So that's all me. I apologize in advance for the answer. Hold on a sec. I got a cough. There. So I will first apologize for the fact that when I wrote this, it was about 4 a.m. I was drunk as all hell, and I'd been on this Coheed and Cambria kick for about 6 days straight, where I was just living the Amory Wars as my life. So the Crowing and Resdane, that little piece, was actually just the incomplete intro, if you will, is what you have. It's part of a larger project that will kind of delve into what we set out to do at the onset of this project, and talk about how the Ghost Choir tried to subvert Landfall by destroying Numidium ahead of time, by completely altering it out of the timeline. So that is the project goal that the Crowing and Resdane was going to tackle, was my bit dealing with the Dwemer and the Battle of Red Mountain to make that never really happen. Yeah, so basically the Crowing and Resdane, as it is my Coheed and Cambria, the space opera Tess. To answer a few smaller questions within it, I took kind of a sci-fi vibe to give the Ghost Choir that, space age awesomeness that we wanted to give it, make it something that isn't quite connected to the actual lore itself and is somewhere outside. And then the third part, which I really apologize for, I wanted really to just make it weird. So yeah, the Crowing and Resdane is supposed to be a little bit out there. It's supposed to be kind of one of those head scratchers, that you hopefully view a little bit like you do as the Super Vec Friends portion of Coda.
And Evan, I remember when you you were first writing that you talked about how you were going to make Ghostwire 9 into the crew of a ship. And I cannot remember the specifics, but I remember us talking about that there was going to be some similarity with Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, so Ghostwire 9, I think I made the name of their ship, actually, throughout some of the creative process. And I've got a lot more in like my just scattered out notes that I'm looking at here. So the way that I took it is Ghostwire 9 is the crew of a ship called the Ghostwire. Wow, this was a year ago. Some of these are actually invalid points, but yeah, here it is at the end of the crowing, where I've got Ghostwire 9 in italics to show that it's the name of a ship. So that's kind of neat. Good job. Thanks for remembering that, Zeigler.
You know it, brother.
Okay, so Laurel asks, is this series implying that there were versions of Dwemer who went on to live happy, normal Dwemer lives culturally close to the Chimer?
Okay, so that's me. I have been looking forward to this one. So, first and foremost, there are two things that you need to know about when I'm writing coda stuff. I always use two things. One, the unreliable narrator, because I'm just making this crap up as I go. Not really. I mean, there's some forethought. So everything can be doubted. Everything can be controverted. That's fine. And then the second thing is the multiverse theory. So in my Codeverse, there is a universe where the Dwemer did not get wiped out. They figured out their problem. And you see that in, is it Revelata, I think? And so they're able to kind of like just get on with it, man, and just live and have happy lives and make little robots and miniaturized robot stuffies, which I still say is the best thing in any of my stories.
Little build-a-numidium shops, you know?
It's good times. I mean, why not? Why not? I mean, it's in the stories it's much more serious, but it's kind of fun stuff too. But yeah, so in one of these universes they do that, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff about how then they're like, okay, well, let's make sub-universes called tesseracts and stuff like that, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun.
Dwarven spheres seem like the adorable Star Wars droids in this interpretation. I don't even think we need to pass that one around. I think yes, absolutely. It's BB9, but with ballistas. Yeah.
All I was gonna say is, what, you didn't know that BB-8 was a Dwemer animunculus? Okay.
Yeah. Why do they have to fail? Why does the Ghost Choir fall?
I think we touched on that at the beginning. They were doomed to fail from the outset because there's no way to stabilize time, especially from the humanocentric standpoint that the Ghost Choir is operating on. Their mission is kind of fucked from its outset. So their very programming necessitates their failure.
Yeah, their mission is basically impossible from the very beginning. Time in Tamriel is wibbly-wobbly as hell already. I mean, just the nature of... Yeah, I mean, the nature of the dragon winding itself is so completely weird that it's entirely too subjective for you to be able to declare something as rigid as, Empire Actual or Tamriel Prime is sort of going against the nature of the universe itself. It's just not possible. So, but then the alternative is sort of like saying it's like, again, if you're a Whovian and if you're an Elder Scrolls fan, you should be, you can ask yourself, well, when the Doctor dies, do his adventures stop as well? And when you're dealing with something that traverses time the way that Ghost Choir does and the way that the Doctor does, the stories don't end. Because if you want to tell another story, you just pick a spot in the timeline and stick her in there, and that's where it happens. So, does the Ghost Choir, get wiped out? Yeah, but that's at the end of a potentially infinite line of stuff. So do they die? The answer is not really. Yeah. Yeah, and like you just said in chat, friends, and that's why Doctor Who doesn't have canon. Because anything can change at any given point. Hmm?
You can't forget
sorry, it doesn't have a fucking canon. Yes, thank you. Yeah. The Out of World asks, and finally, did Lig get its face kicked in for good when Numidium bashed its flip side to hell and back, or is it still intact in some manner?
Lig's Lig. Lig doesn't give a fuck about your Numidium.
Yeah.
Yeah, the important thing to remember about all of Coda is that Lig is unaffected by it, largely. It never got its own love letter. It never had a landfall in which Numidium was there. Lig is the sideways parallel that you have to fold a piece of paper describing Tamriel and poke a hole through it to get to.
Right on. Yeah, it's not. I agree completely. Lig exists outside of Coda, if you like. I've always kind of liked the idea that the idea of inhabitants of Lig watching all this fucked up shit happen in Tamriel Actual and go, man, let them not over there. And just sort of, hey, you guys want to jet on over to Tamriel Actual and stick our finger, stir up the pot a little bit, kind of fuck shit up, I mean, they got problems, but fuck them.
Well, that's the important thing is they've had their fall already. We've read about the fall of Lig in numerous texts, mostly out of game until we get to the commentaries. Yeah. They're just laughing at this point. They're like, suck it, nerds. Why don't you go cry to your mom a little bit more?
Last question. Are there any future works for the LDZ authors?
Definitely for me. Our project isn't completely out there yet. We're still posting up some stuff via Ziegler, putting out the rest of the LDZ stuff. I've got the rest of the crowing to write. We still have our initial project goal to actually manage. I'd say that there's a lot more coming. I don't know how much of it's going to be seen by the larger community. And I don't know that all of it's going to be strictly test related either.
Yeah. I mean, I have one more after this. I have one more a story that takes itself seriously. Which is a main car story. Because I feel like it's time I circled back to main car.
Yes.
And then
you always been dropping
my lore, and I am just gonna fuck with superheroes and Tamriel and let other people with danker beards than I do, come up with the serious shit, because I'm down with superheroes and Tamriel. That's my jam right now. And so I guess that's what you could look out for, because I have a comic series. It's a limited run, self-published, because I can't make money off it, so it's freely distributed. But with some wicked good art by Mikhail Pabor, who is a tremendous artist. We will slap some links on some of his art.
Check him out.
That dude needs exposure, because he is one of the raddest artists I know. And his art for the first issue of Velothi Come has been nothing short of just fucking wow. And I mean, hopefully we stick through. The first issue is getting inked and colored. And then there's going to be 3 more issues after that, all around 40 pages long. Yeah, I mean, superheroes and Tamriel, what the fuck more do you want? And I have a Professor Newman-Addis thing in the works as well.
LJ, I don't think you can physically stop writing, so do you have anything you're working on?
Well, I got done with the Utah Code issue 1, so I was happy about that. It worked.
Nice to get it out the door.
Yeah, that was a very impressive piece of work. Yeah.
That was a blue ball and son of a bitch.
Cody, do you have anything lined up?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Did you
good
want
enough.
Yeah, I'm currently working on some more Edelbrecht stuff for the Landfall Daisier project. I've also got a few other test projects and not test projects that I'm writing that I'm in various stages on. But hopefully you'll all be seeing sooner than later.
And Ziegler, do you have anything other than LDZ? I know you've got tons of stuff, actually. Yeah,
I do. I have tons of stuff. The stuff that you're going to see soonest is I have a trilogy of stories about an Imga, which will be set during the War of Righteousness. So that's kind of different. And now, if you didn't know, all of my LDZ stories are kind of setting up my next major Coda project. And I have been teasing it for over like a year and a half now, calling it Coda Next. And for all of you, I will tell you tonight that it is called The House of Dusk and Dawn. And I have no idea when it'll be out. Hopefully 2017 sometime. But yeah, lots of irons in the fire.
Okay, well, that's going to do us for today's special episode of the Selectives Lorecast. We're going to be coming back, I think, as soon as possible to talk about... I want to do Scrolls in Space next.
Yes, definitely.
Space.
That's my thing. I want to do that.
Space.
Like,
So-
you could, like, just drop some tatterdemalion nuggets out and...
Yeah, I kind of want to finish I work on the main quest document like once a day for like maybe about 10-15 minutes a day, and I'm still working on it, trying to get it coherent, because I found out at one point or another that I had one of the chapters in the outline was different in description from the brief description, and then the actual like full length description, and they were basically 3 completely different events. And I was looking at it going, how the fuck did I screw that up? Like, it was really bad. So I like picked the one that was good, and then I went, so like, yeah, if you stick your head in it sometime, friends, and you'll see that there's been a lot of edits. And it's, and above all that, I'm trying to keep it from getting very long, which is tricky. The whole Friends in Low Places section is really way too huge. Where I talk about all the forces you can bring against Tatterdemalion. And it's like this long list of everybody that the Dovahkiin could theoretically get on his side, and that's a really long list, as it turns out. Like, frighteningly long. And yet another reason why the mod could never happen, because theoretically you could get all of them, is the idea, is that I wanted to give you the ability to get like every guild that you run could back you up, as well as every Daedric prince who owes you a favor, as well as, possibly the Empire or the Stormcloaks. I mean, like, that's a lot of scripting. So, yes, and then there's also the Riemann Cum Vault. Let's just drop that one there. Let's just drop that little tasty nugget off, and we will see you guys as usual, whenever we see you. Everybody wave.
Peace out, guys.
Take care, friends. Thanks.